We're going to call the session to order. If we would stand, and we'll have the pledge of the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we need a motion for the agenda.
Motion to approve this evening's agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay. Is there any awards tonight? No? Okay. All right, we're going to start. There's going to be 3 public hearings tonight, and the way they work, normally you have up to 10 minutes for anybody who wants to speak for them, and then we'll go the same amount of time anybody against it. So with that in mind, we have the first one. This is the public hearing for the millage rate and the budget for 2025.
Good evening. I'll try not to take up the whole 10 minutes. As you have heard, I think a couple of times now, and this is the 3rd public hearing for the fiscal year 25 budget and calendar year 2024 millage rate. Over the past couple of weeks, we presented to you the fiscal year 25 budget, and it is developed keeping the millage rate the same and addressing the council's goals that were set forth in previous discussions. These goals are economic development, financial stability, internal operations, infrastructure improvements, and public safety. We'll start off with the general fund, which is the fund that accounts for all the revenues and expenditures associated with general administration, public safety, public works, tourism, and so on. In the revenue side, we are proposing the millage rate stay the same at 3.264, which is an estimated tax increase of about $240,000. Other revenues that we're seeing an increase in is the local option sales tax, which is those taxes you pay when you buy something. And it's going up about 43%. Just a reminder, sometime, I believe this fiscal year, or the fiscal year before, our allocation increased from 2.92% to 4.62%. That was based on the annual census and our population growth. Another category that we're seeing increase is title ad valorem tax, and that is the new tax that was established several years ago. When you go buy a vehicle, you pay the sales tax up front instead of the annual birthday tax. And then also insurance premium tax, about a 17% growth there. On the expenditure side, primarily we are proposing a planned increase for personnel of a 4% COLA and a 2% merit based on their annual evaluation. Also, we are proposing additional 2 new positions. One is an administrative assistant in the Department of Fund and a wastewater sewer maintenance trainee position. And also, we are proposing a $1.2 million transfer for capital projects, which we'll discuss at a later slide. But some of those areas are for road paving and sidewalks and stormwater. Overall, general fund budget up 14%. This slide, I know it's hard to see, but it's just the numbers behind what we've just discussed. This slide shows just the revenue portion. And this is the expenditure portion by department. And there at the bottom, you can see the $1.2 million transfer for capital projects. So this slide just shows how that tax dollar is at work based on our proposed budget. So for every one tax dollar, You can see that 29 cents of that dollar goes to public safety, 22 cents to operations, 16 cents to public works, 11 cents to housing and development, which is the planning, 12 cents is to capital, 7 cents to tourism, and 8 cents to municipal court.
Matt?
Yes.
What are the two asterisks for by tourism?
I think that was probably a leftover from the first year of tourism being a new department. I'll have that corrected next year. This slide just shows a comparison of the millage rate based on if we were to roll it back. And I just want to spend a minute here on this slide. So on the left side, it shows the calculation of the average household value of $425,000 and what that tax bill would be at that value had we rolled it back to the calculated rollback. And then on the right side shows keeping it the same. In that comparison, it just shows about a $35 and a 87 cent increase. But that's a little confusing. So I want to talk about property values. If your property value did not change, then your tax bill should be exactly the same as the last year. So if you want to think about it a different way, had we rolled it back, it would have been $35 less. So I just want everyone to realize that if your property value didn't change, then that tax bill is not going to change. That's correct. But that's out of our control. This slide just shows a comparison of the millage rates across the county. As you probably can't see, but if you'd like to look at this, I can show it to you later, or any of the public that would like to see it. That bottom line there at 3.264 is the Flowery Branch's millage rate, and that's what we're proposing it stay at, and it is the lowest in the county. This slide just shows a tax breakdown of each dollar as it goes to the county, the school system, and Flowery Branch. For every dollar of tax revenue, 59 cents goes to the school system, 30 cents goes to the county, and 11 cents comes to the city of Flowery Branch. And then this slide ending up on general fund is the fund balance history. And this just shows our fund balance relatively remaining stagnant from fiscal year 24 to 25. I just remind you that we had a $2.5 million transfer to capital this fiscal year, and so that will leave us about the same for next fiscal year for capital projects in fiscal year 26. However, that is based on preliminary estimates, not audited financials. Moving on to wastewater. Revenues, we're just seeing some increases in collections just based on that 8.7% increase that was approved a couple years ago. Other expenditures is the planned increase for the COLA and the merit, which I discussed in general fund. We're also seeing some increases in chemicals and supplies, and then also you'll see an increase of just the potential to send flow to Gainesville and the costs associated with that. This just shows the numbers behind the revenue and expenditure for wastewater. And so I also failed to mention on the revenues, we also did increase some revenues in anticipation of new homes coming online during the year. And then again, this shows the wastewater and sewer fund balance. And you can see there the difference between the net investment in capital assets and unrestricted net position. And I believe there was a question in earlier discussions about that $10.9 million net position. And I kind of want to just give you a breakdown of that. So $10.9 million is an unrestricted net position, but we also need to consider the projects we've allocated those funds to that have not been spent yet. So prior to fiscal year 23 was $3.6 million In fiscal year 24 was 767,000, and then we're proposing in fiscal year 25 another 695,000 for anticipated projects. So if you take that out of the unrestricted, that leaves us at $5.7 million in unrestricted fund balance. And then we have a policy that requires us to keep 7 months of expenses in that number, which is another $2.5 million. So a true unrestricted that could be allocated for future items is about $3.2 million. Moving on to the next few funds. These are kind of some of the smaller ones, but some are big too. This was the confiscated asset fund. This is the fund that accounts for any of the revenue that we receive from that have been confiscated by the police department or DEA that we're a part of. And so you can see there that's a $25,000 budget. That's what's anticipated to be left in retained earnings. It does not account for anything that we may receive in that fiscal year, which this budget will be adjusted for that as we receive those. Moving on to the American Rescue Plan Fund. Several years ago, I'm sure we can all remember the COVID years. There was a large federal spend related to that, and this accounts for the portion of money that we received from the federal government for it was called American Rescue Plan. And we received in total about $3.5 million. And you can see there in fiscal year 25, we have a small budget of about $52,000, and that is just the interest we have earned through the years, and which means we've spent those funds down, which is a good thing because we have to have everything under contract by the end of this calendar year and spent by the end of 2026, which we have about $100,000 or so left to spend. So we anticipate having that spent by the end of this calendar year. Moving on to the tax allocation district. This is a portion of the tax funds that are associated with the tax allocation district, and we use those funds for economic development. And you can see that it's a healthy fund, and we should have some residual funds to incentivize future development in this district. I will make one point that we had 2 developer agreements, one of which will be paid off in fiscal year 25, and then the other, which was a 20-year deal, we anticipate being paid off in the next 7 years. Gibson one, and the other is Flowery Branch Partners, which is the one that will be paid off this coming fiscal year. But that's just a testament that those were a 15-year deal and a 20-year deal, and they'll be paid off in the half of the time. So that economic development that y'all did in downtown is really paying off. Moving on to the Information Technology Fund. This is a fund that accounts for those fees associated with citations that are designated to technology improvements in the public safety area. And so this is what we anticipate will be remaining at the end of this fiscal year and received during next fiscal year. And I will also state that these funds can only be used for technology needs and public safety. Moving on to Hotel Motel Tax Fund. This is the taxes associated with the hotel and various Airbnbs and things like that. And this is just relatively flat for next fiscal year. Finally, Employee Benefits Fund. This is a fund we started this year, and it accounts for the benefits associated with the employees. And we established this fund to just show as an internal service fund so we can capture those in one place, but also try and build a little bit of fund balance that way if those costs increase, that we don't have to pass that on to the employees, and that fund balance there can eat those costs up. This slide is talking about the capital improvements program, which I briefly mentioned earlier. In total, $30 million. A large part of that is the $25 million bond that we get to talk about later for the wastewater expansion. And we have things in there like stormwater annual road pavings, things like that. And then this just shows a breakdown of the each fund and increases over the years. Yes, it shows $44 million and a 44% increase, but I will remind you that $25 million of that is the bond. So if you take that out, let me get to the slide, sorry. If you pull that out, it would actually be a net decrease of 36.78%. And so tonight is the final public hearing. We were required to do 3 public hearings because by maintaining the same millage rate, it is classified as a tax increase. So this will be the 3rd and final hearing for that. Also tonight, you'll hear the budget resolution, which will adopt the budget, and you'll also hear about the ordinance to adopt the millage rate. If you have do you have any questions for me?
I have just one. So in the previous version that we went through this, you had one more slide which showed the number of new positions that we would be adding this year.
Yes.
So just one number? Is that back here now?
Yeah, it was on one of the first slides. I don't think it had the authorized position schedule. It's in the actual document, but let me move back to the first slide here. There on this slide, we're proposing 2 new positions. One is the administrative assistant in tourism or Department of Fund, which is what we like to call it, and 1 position in the wastewater fund for a maintenance trainee.
So 3 new positions?
Just 2.
Just 2?
Yeah.
And the maintenance trainee?
Maintenance trainee position and the administrative assistant in Department of Fund.
Oh, I get it. Thank you.
Yeah. I will also mention all this is online. We have posted the budget, proposed budget with the authorized position on our webpage, and I think there's a link on our app also.
Street for front adjustments to the front porch and the garage.
Good evening. Yes, this is a variance, actually 2 variance requests. And I just want to note that Anna Pang actually handled this case, and she did all the work, so I don't want to take credit for this, and she's worked hard on this. She couldn't be here this evening, so fortunately I'm your cheap substitute this evening. But I just wanted to let you know that she did work on this and did a very good job on it. So again, tonight is just a public hearing to consider variance requests for 5632 Church Street, and this regards the front porch and the placement of the garage. This just shows the proposed location with the blue star on Church Street. The first request is listed as the garage, and basically in the TND zoning district, as you know, we require this to be placed in the side or the backyard. And due to restrictions on the size of this parcel, they'd like to put this in the front. And if you'll notice, I'll show you as I go forward, but the actual garage entrance doesn't face the street. You pull in and then pull into the garage, and I'll show you that in the next slide. By doing this and putting the garage in front, it actually has to shrink the porch a little bit. And as you know, in TND, we require that 16 by 6 porch, and what they are asking to do is a 13.5 by almost 7. And this is the layout, and as you can see, like I was saying, you would drive in and then turn into the garage. It wouldn't actually face the street, but it is technically in front of the front plane of the house, so that is why we'd have to have the variance for that, because it's not on the side or behind the house. So tonight we have the public hearing. We're scheduled for the first read. Of course, we don't have a meeting on July 4th, so it'll be July 18th. And then the second read scheduled for the first meeting in August. Staff is in favor of this. We feel that it's valid. There are restrictions due to the parcel. Whenever you consider a variance, it needs to be something that is not caused by the applicant. In this case, we believe that it is restricted by the size of the lot, and they're not able to meet the requirements of T&D without the variances. With that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Rich, are there any other variances besides the garage? Like, are they able to meet? I mean, it's a very small lot. I'll have to give them that, right? Are there any other variances regarding distance from the house to the lot lines and the surrounding 3 houses?
No, as far as I know, that they're meeting all the requirements of that. These are only 2 that they've struggled with. And the lot is small, but it does meet the minimal requirements of the T&D zoning.
So it's what, 40 feet?
I don't know the actual lot. I know the lot size is what's in question would be, I think it's 6,700 square feet and requirements 5,000. I believe that's right. And yeah, so they would put these variances in, and then they would actually have to submit. We would double check and review all that when they actually came in to acquire the building permit. We would require the site plan, and it'd be very similar to what you see here, but we would look through all the measurements and check everything once it was officially submitted. But to the best of my knowledge, those are the only 2 that they would need at this time. I just know that this is next door to the McClinches, and I don't recall if there was something on that site previously or not. I just can't remember. When I first started here in August of 2016, I think maybe on my second week here, I dealt with the McClinches trying to get them set up with their new house, but I just can't recall if there was one there or not. Oh, okay. Well, there you have it. Thank you.
Hearing none, then we will close that public hearing, and we'll go to the third public hearing, which is to consider ordinance 717, condition about microbreweries in the central business district.
Thank you, Mayor. This ordinance is to add some uses related to microbreweries and micro distilleries to your zoning ordinance, and then to clarify and specify where microbreweries, micro distilleries, brew pubs, and distilleries and breweries can be placed as a use. And Mr. Baggett is out of town tonight, so I'm filling in for him. He drafted this ordinance and went through to add the definitions to clarify microbreweries being different and micro distilleries being different from distilleries and breweries, basically based on the amount of volume that they manufacture. The smaller forms can do some things under state law, like some on-premises sales that large breweries could not. And so it's just to set up the locations in the city of Flowery Branch where these types of uses would be allowed. There is a corresponding alcohol ordinance amendment that will go along with this as well, but it does not require a public hearing.
Does anybody have any questions about that?
This is only in the CBD. This only applies to CBD.
That is correct. A microbrewery, a microdistillery can only be in the CBD with a CUP, a conditional use permit.
Page 9 of your ordinance on your chart, that shows that your microbreweries and microdistilleries are only allowed as a conditional use permit in the CBD zoning classification or district.
I think that was in the information that's under on the agenda. If you look far enough, there was a lot of pages.
So a future applicant then would have to still come before the council to get approval. One of these
That is correct.
Any other questions? Okay. Is there anything, anybody else want to speak for that? Okay, then we will, is there anyone that would speak against it? Okay, then we will close that public hearing, and we'll move to unfinished business in the work session. That's going to be the second reading of ordinance 716 to establish the millage rate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know that unless there are any other questions in the unfinished business, I don't know that we have any more information. We've done our required 3 public hearings. The millage rate is staying the same.
Okay, is there any other questions that anybody has about the millage rate? Okay, then we'll move to new business. And in the work session, the first to consider a beer and wine license for a pizza place located at 5315 Atlanta Highway.
Good afternoon. So the police department did receive an application from Pizza d'Italia to have serve beer and wine at 5315 Atlanta Highway. Myself and Chief Holsey, we went on site last week to make sure they were in compliance with our ordinance, and they do meet all the criteria. So we just need council's approval so the business can move forward with getting a state license.
This is in that new brick building that there was a hamburger place there one time.
It was a hamburger and it was a butcher shop before.
It used to be a post office, right?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
That was before she's born.
Where's Chris Mundy when you need him?
That's right.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Anybody?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next, consider authorizing the mayor to execute the T-Splash option sale intergovernmental agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an intergovernmental agreement between Hall County and 9 municipalities, and there is a combined meeting on June 27th, I do believe, at Hall County. But rather than having to make sure we have a quorum at this meeting, this is an item to allow for council to approve the mayor signing the T-Splash agreement. The T-Splash agreement, if signed by all the municipalities, would allow for a full 6-year agreement for collections of T-Splash. The total amount anticipated is $390 million for the entire county and all the municipalities. If it is approved, it's going on the November ballot. If it is approved, there is an item in the top 80% items for a Mulberry Street connector for Flowery Branch of $2.5 million. The main project on there is widening McKever Road from Buford up through Oakwood, where it turns into a 4-lane highway, and then Spout Springs Phase 2. So there are also some other items within the agreement or within all of the projects that would affect Flowery Branch, like Blackjack Road is one of them, I know, but not in the city limits of Flowery Branch. But if it is approved in November, there is a lot that Flowery Branch residents will see and feel with transportation improvements. But this item is only to allow for the mayor to sign that intergovernmental agreement. I do. So the total, so there's a calculation based on a sort of it's an increased population number, and that total is 7.64 million for Flowery Branch. So not only would there be 2.5 million up in the top 80%, but down below in the 20% are just percentages for each municipality, and that amount is the 7.6 million. And I will just add to that if the intergovernmental agreement is signed, you can continue collecting the tax beyond. So if the economy is fantastic and there's more tax like our current SPLOST that is being collected, you can continue collecting the tax for these specific projects that are in the referendum. But if the intergovernmental agreement is not signed, the tax will stop when you reach the amount.
Just so that everyone knows that it would be a 1 penny tax, and it can only be used for transportation. It can't just be spent on anything. So.
Do you have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the real estate agreement with Blessings Trader on the purchase of property for the roundabout at Gaines Ferry and McEver Road.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is for the second of 4 properties for right-of-way acquisition that we need to start construction on our roundabout at the intersection of McEver Road and Gaines Ferry Road. This corner is the southwest corner where a gas station is planned already, and they have worked with us really nicely. They've been very kind. They have waited for us to begin this. They've moved their project back because they were really already approved before we started this whole roundabout process. This real estate agreement requires us to purchase right-of-way in an amount of $74,490.
This would be the second of 4 that we would have.
Yes, sir.
No questions on there? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the consider resolution 24-003.
Good evening again. I'm just going to read this section, and then I'm going to talk about a couple of the items. So this is Resolution 24-003 to adopt the fiscal year 2025 annual budget for each fund, fiscal year 25 capital plan, master fee schedule for fiscal year 25, authorized positions for fiscal year 25, and update the holiday calendar for the city of Flowery Branch, Georgia. To appropriate the amount shown in each budget as expenditures or expenses, to adopt the several items of revenue anticipations, to set the legal level of budgetary control, to prohibit expenditures or expenses from expending the actual funding available, to prohibit expenditures or expenses beyond the fiscal year for which they are appropriated to provide for an effective date. So that's a lot of things we're approving, one of which you've already seen, the fiscal year 2025 budget and capital plan and authorized positions. Two items I'd like to discuss that have some changes are the master fee schedule and the holiday calendar. And on the master fee schedule, they're primarily remaining same from last fiscal year, but there are some few changes that I'd like to discuss. In tourism, the depot rental, half day, we're proposing moving from $300 to $400. The depot rental full day from $550 to $650. Also, we had a community room half-day rental, which will be removed and no longer be an option. Also establish a farmers market vendor fee for the summer at a rate of $125, which was originally $100 for the whole year. Also, utility billing account service fee from $2.36 to $2.57. We'll also establish a FOG fee, which is fats, oil, and grease. And those are various rates depending on each situation. Utility billing meter box fee from $13.89 to $19.25, which is really a cost change. We're not making any money off that. It's just the cost of those have gone up. Also, the utility lid fee of $11.55 to $25.50, which is also a cost thing. We're also going to, in planning, establish a demolition fee of $75, establish a PTV fee of $20, establish a retaining wall fee of $500, establish a right-of-way delivery fee of $50, and establish a variance fee of $500. And then also one change in the master set fee for a 3/4 inch and 1 inch meter size. That is changed. It was a set fee, and we're changing all those fees to an at cost because those fees change from throughout the year, and it's not quite equitable anymore. So we're going to change that to an at cost fee. Do you have any questions about those? And then finally, on the holiday calendar, we're just proposing an additional holiday of November 11th, which is Veterans Day. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions. Thank you.
Next, we'll consider the adoption of Resolution 24-004.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we have Mr. Brian Husky here from Stiefel. He is the underwriter for these bonds, and we have heard this item several times, but the bond pricing was today, so I thought it would be appropriate for Mr. Husky to come up and let you know how well that went today, please.
Thank you. We did, as indicated, we did go to market today on pricing the bonds, but this is sort of the final step on a month-long process to get the bonds ready for marketing. Part of that was we prepared this, and we and the city prepared this document that went to all the investment community today and for the prior few days. But in conjunction with that, we also went and talked with the bond rating agencies as part of this process. The city does have an existing bond rating with Moody's Investor Service. That bond rating is a AA2 credit rating. And we had a good discussion with them, and they came back and affirmed that AA2 rating. And a lot of that was based off of the city's strong practices that y'all put into place. Specifically, some of the management practices, the financial performance, and the fund balance maintenance that you all have maintained. And actually, they did indicate that based off of this and the trajectory going forward, that they could see a roadmap for you getting a rating upgrade in the foreseeable future, which would be to a AA1. And that'd be one of the highest ratings in the state. There aren't too many cities that carry that strong of a rating, so it definitely would be a testament to what's going on. Based on that kind of credit rating, Plus, we did get a strong market. The bond market's coming back in your favor. So we were able to go out and price the bonds today. Excuse me. And we locked in a 4.22% interest rate, and that's an average interest rate. The way bonds are priced, each maturity of a bond has a different rate associated with it. But on average, it was a 4.22% yield on the bonds. Importantly, I would point out that typically bonds price with a 10-year call option, which basically means that in 10 years, the city, if you decided to, you could refinance or pay off the bonds if you had that capacity. We were able to price it more aggressively and lock in a 7-year call option, so you can actually refinance or pay it off earlier, depending on whatever the market mechanics at that point in time are. So really, it just gives you a lot more flexibility. This bond issue is being issued in conjunction with the GFA loan that you already have, and it really combined is providing the financing for that wastewater treatment plant. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Once that's approved tonight, we'll be able to put out for bid and get going on that.
Yes, sir. The bonds will actually sell. If this is approved tonight, the bonds will sell on July 19th.
Correct. They'll close on July 19th.
Yes, and then we will be able to issue the notice to proceed. We'll have an item on July 18th's agenda for an amendment to the Archer Western contract for the entire amount of the gross maximum price that they have presented to you. And then after that sale, we'll have the funding in place so we can issue a notice to proceed and a purchase order for the work. And the work will finally begin.
Yes. We're happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next is an amendment to the lease agreement for Baby Bell Candied Apples.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is a request from Baby Bell Candy Apples to extend their lease agreement for 6 months. They were to start paying their lease agreement in February or upon opening, whichever came quicker. And they have been telling us that they're requesting an extension. We have not gotten it to you by now. The other tenants in our Main Street building have each gotten a 6-month extension. This is the request for their 6-month extension. They will start paying rent August 1st if this extension is approved. And if it's not, they'll owe us back rent for February 1st. But this is for the top building on Main Street at Church Street in the city's commercial spots. And they are moving right along. They have submitted plans. They've received comments. They've resubmitted their plans. And they should be in there very soon. In there, starting to get their space ready.
Questions there? Okay, next is consider the termination of the lease for Gustinos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, Justino's is unable to carry on with their request to occupy our last spot that was available. That is our sort of our prime spot. It's on Main Street. It's the lowest one as you're coming up. It's the closest one to the railroad tracks, right beside the entrance into the farmer's market. They have requested to terminate this lease agreement, and we are in conversations with someone to actually market that through a professional to get that last spot filled. It's very unfortunate, and we're very sad about that.
Next is the consideration of the first reading, ordinance number 717.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the one that we have just had the public hearing about, allowing the microbreweries, microdistilleries within the CBD Central Business District with a conditional use permit, CUP, Do you have any other questions or comments about this ordinance? And the next one is ordinance number 718, which really goes in conjunction with the previous one. One is updating our alcohol licensing regulations in our code of ordinances, whereas the other is updating our zoning ordinance text. So this is just specifying exactly where each of those types of uses can go.
Next, we go to department reports. City manager's report.
No report, sir. Thank you.
City clerk? No report, sir. Department of Fund.
Good evening. I will be real brief. I just wanted to, since we're not going to be here and for a while, I wanted to share with you just a couple of events that are coming. Our next Music in the Branch is July the 7th. We have Mary Kate Farmer coming over to the amphitheater. That will be a ton of fun. And then our tomato sandwich party is going to be July the 18th. So that's what I have.
Finance Department? Human Resources? Planning Department?
Just want to let you all know that we have the official zoning map. We finally got some paper back in to print that out. So Ed was nice enough to officially sign that this evening. So if anyone would like any hard copies, please just email me. I can print them out for you. And we'll also, either tomorrow or next week, get that scanned. So we'll have it digitally and we can put it on the website and all that. But if you want any large printouts or whatever size you want, just let me know and we'll work on getting it for you.
Police Department?
Here's a couple of things I want to talk about. Officer Rick Whaley, which is our community relations officer, received his FAA license to fly a drone in the day and night. So FY26 will probably be requesting a helicopter, so just want to let y'all know that for now. The second thing, Miss Kelsey Cash, is her 11th year anniversary today, so I just wanted to acknowledge her. Couldn't do this without her. The third thing I want to talk about is, January of 2023, we had a incident at Tree Park Apartments where a guy got shot and ended up dying. I just wanted to let everybody know that the fourth suspect pled guilty yesterday on that. So that case is actually closed and didn't take a lot of taxpayer money. They all pled guilty, so that's a good thing. In the morning, our first police department recruit, Cody Inman, graduates in Athens tomorrow, so he'll be starting work as a police officer Monday. Going to have to get with you, Mayor, to swearing him in, but he's actually going to be graduating tomorrow morning. So, thank y'all.
Public Works? Nothing to report, sir. Thank you. Okay. Attorney's report?
No report.
I just wanted to comment on the landscape that's been added around City Hall, and that looks tremendous. And then also, I was just looking around here, we're being watched now in City Hall. We've added some security measures around the buildings and whatnot here at City Hall and some of the other properties that the city has. So that's it's good to see those go up.
And I would like to give a shout out to Renee and Bailey and all the
city staff who put together the A1A concert last week. It was great. I don't know how many people showed up, but it was packed. Good thing you closed that road off and put some lights out there. Great job.
Good, and also all the work was put in to get this budget. I think Matt starts on the budget once this was approved. He starts working on next year. So anyway, thank you, Matt. We'll adjourn that session and start the voting session. We'll call it to order. And now we're going to have public comments. And there's a clock up here for 2 minutes. If when you come up, if you would state your name and give your address, and then we'll start the clock. So first is Mr. Moats.
Good evening, everybody. Bill Moats, 5780 Screech Owl Drive, and I'm the president of the Summit Lake Homeowners Association. We were last here on May 16th, and since then we've had little to no information on any progress about the streets issue that we have. At that meeting, the city attorney was asked by the council to look at the issue and report back. As of today, there's still no progress. Today, I learned that there are no inspection reports that can be found for any inspections of the storm drain system once the work was completed before building started. I don't understand how that is even possible. Does that mean the only inspection that was ever done was by the public works staff more than 5 or so years later? The question of how or why there was no bond required is only one of the issues. The issue of why a bond wasn't required, that's for y'all to figure out and fix going forward. Aside from the why, the bigger question is, what are you going to do to fix this issue and make this right to get our streets and infrastructure accepted by the city? Since May 16th meeting, we are still not able to have speed radar signs that I've talked about with Rick Whaley. The chief and his staff have been great to work with, but they seem to be in a bind because they are told that our streets are private, and that's presenting issues for them. All anybody at the city tells me is that our streets are private. There's no explanation as to why they believe the streets are private. And if they are private, as the city contends, who owns them? The HOA has never been deeded ownership of the streets, nor have we signed any documents to take ownership. If we don't own them and the city hasn't accepted them, whose streets are we driving on? As residents, taxpayers, and voters, we are now being denied the use of services available to us, and we're in limbo on getting our streets accepted by the city. We're asking that this issue get resolved with more of a sense of urgency and that the city enforce Ordinance 334-A that was voted on and approved on April 19th, 2018, where it clearly stated the streets would be public and dedicated to the city forever. All water mains, sanitary sewers, easements, and associated appurtenances that are thereon shown. If I could have 30 more seconds.
Go ahead.
Okay. As to the why issue, from what I have read in the ordinances and comments made in email replies, the why this happened seems clear. Somebody didn't do their job. If somebody has dropped the ball, own the mistake, and let's make it right. Rich has gone as far to tell me that it's not standard practice to require a bond, and we like to have a bond in place for all developments. We are working towards standardizing the forms and process and requiring them to be in place on the final plat. I've provided text from the ordinances that states a bond is already required, and if I'm reading it incorrectly, somebody has yet to explain why I'm incorrect. When asked about the owner's dedication certificate on the final plat that was approved on April 19, 2018, it has been stated that the understanding from the former attorney and former plan reviewers that the Flowery Branch Code of Ordinances, which requires streets to be formally turned over via city council vote, supersedes the statements on the plat. Yet, there's been no statement as to where that ordinance, what is stated in that ordinance, which ordinance it is, and when it was dated. And is this just an understanding that might be incorrect, or is that fact? Thank you for the additional time. I appreciate it.
Do we know exactly sometimes what ends up happening is whoever comes in has the development rezoned or whatever, and sometimes they can change hands 3 or 4 times. So I just asked the question: Do we know who to address and say, hey, this needs to come back before council, so that there can be a vote on accepting these trees?
Yes. The developer is FB Partners. That was G. Harvey and Doug Cotter. The builder is D.R. Horton. I know that Bill Moats has worked tirelessly with both of them, trying to get everything as it should be. Our ordinances state that the city council will accept the roads when the developer asks for the roads to be dedicated. When that happens, our staff goes out and marks the roads. That was done. The developer fixed the roads, or the builder, I'm not sure who. The builder fixed the roads. And then our custom, so the time for inspection is until we accept those roads and whatever's in the right-of-way. So Bill Whidden climbs down in stormwater drains, and he saw that it was substandard. It's failing, and the water, it's not connected. When it goes down, the stormwater structure is not connected. So the water is running under. So we will not accept faulty infrastructure. And that is for any neighborhood in the city. So the roads and the right-of-way infrastructure, that was communicated back, and they let Mr. Moats know they're done. They're doing nothing else. D.R. Horton nor Flowery Branch Partners, which I don't know exists anymore, but obviously the two people exist. But, okay, thank you. So we're sort of in this limbo, and this is what Ted is checking out, is at what do we do from here? And Ted is working on it, and I communicated with Ted this week even about this project, and he's not finished his research on it. But he's looking at the bond, but he's also looking at where we go from here and how we address this and what we can do as far as, hey, you got to fix these before we'll take them. So there's a lot in there, and it's not that we're saying they're private roads, they're just not public roads yet. They have not been accepted by the city yet.
And Cotter Properties, FB Partners, they also did Beacon, and they're currently working on developing the townhomes.
Waypoint.
Yes. So they're still around, people associated with it.
Yes.
Have we made any contact, or are we waiting for Ted to contact Cotter and or D.R. Horton to see why they are not going to comply or why they haven't complied with the ordinance?
I have not talked to Cotter or D.R. Horton. I don't know if some of our staff has talked to them, but I do know that they have been working through Bill Moats, and actually I think they've talked to Josh, our inspector, because I did get an email saying that they wanted to dedicate the roads over and what was the process. And this is when all of this started back, I believe it was a year ago, that they wanted to dedicate the roads, and we have a process, and so we started that process at that moment, and they just have not complied.
So if they're doing work in the city now, is there anything that would prevent us from issuing a stop work order on other properties that they're working on until they correct this one?
I believe we have asked that before, but we will check on that.
If they're doing substandard work,
right,
that they can't turn over and we will not accept, that seems to me that would be justification to take some action, for the city to take some action, including letting them stop what they're doing.
We will check on that.
And is there any, like legal action from a standpoint of if somebody's in violation of an ordinance because they signed that they were going, I mean, that ordinance was signed and agreed to back in 2018 that there were going to be public streets, and they haven't done that. I mean, isn't there like a citation of some kind you could issue for completion of the work with a nice, $200,000 fine or something, so we could finish the work for them and deduct it from that money? I mean,
I believe that is what Ted is checking on.
okay. And I also understand we aren't able to determine at this stage what we think the actual cost to fix the damage is, because we haven't been able to inspect the stormwater drains, right?
Well, we have not gone out and gotten a quote on what it would cost to fix what we can see just by popping the top of a stormwater drain. So we have not videoed the lines. We've asked them to video the lines, and they have said they're done.
Typically not, which is why they do it that way, which is why every single development the developer does, they set up a new entity to do, because it's a corporate entity. They cannot be personally liable unless they don't handle the corporate entity correctly. If they handle the corporate entity as if it's their own money, then you can breach the corporate veil. Otherwise, you can't breach the corporate veil. They set up separate entities for every individual project for that very purpose. Once we're done, we walk away, there's no assets. You can sue me, or you can sue the entity, but there's really no assets on which you could collect a judgment if you ever got one.
Next is,
what?
Come up here. Wait, I'm sorry.
So Bill Whitten and his staff have gone what I think is above and beyond to crawl down inside some of these storage drain lines. And there is a lot of stuff that is a problem. What the developer said to me was, that's your problem. He said that they did everything that they were required to do. They were not doing anything else, and that it was unreasonable to expect them to go back and fix issues that are 5+ years in the making that are only being found now. So they've thrown up their hands. D.R. Horton has said, we're done. We negotiated with the developer to fix the curbs and the gutters and the sidewalks. We did what we said we were going to do, and even though their contractor has repairs that need to be made after Bill's people looked at everything, they've thrown up their hands and they have said they're done. So who am I? I'm nobody, right? They're gonna stand me down. They're gonna say nothing. I don't know if you guys would have some bigger impact talking to them, but I can tell you that is their position. Bill's people have been fantastic. I wouldn't have got down to those storm drains, and they did as far as the naked eye could see, and there are issues. But, here we are left in limbo with stuff that we can't do anything about. All we did is buy a house. So thanks for the extra time.
Next is Ms. Haberman. Carol Ann Haberman. Okay. Jason Perkle.
I'm good.
Good, okay. Mr. Weber.
Mark Weber, 6114 Stella Light Drive. And I have to tell you, I really was, it's wonderful that you sat and took the time to listen to these folks and talk with them. And they've got a big problem, and I really appreciate the council doing that. I want to commend Renee. Renee has, the concert over the past weekend was spectacular. It was a huge crowd. It was very organized. There was didn't look like, I mean, whatever bad may have happened, it certainly didn't appear to be happening. The big problem, though, and the wonderful job Renee does, it kind of opens up an issue. And that issue is parking. I mean, people are all over the place. I know it's in future plans, in phase 2, to talk about parking, but we need to talk about parking. I mean, it's now with Renee doing the job she's doing, with many more roofs coming up and a lot more happening around the city, we need to get going on that. Today I had to park on the dirt across the street. I mean, it's kind of good news that there's enough people here at the market to fill up the streets, but it's kind of bad news on rainy days, and it's just miserable. So I'm hoping the council is moving forward on that quickly. I'm also hoping that the council is doing everything it possibly can to encourage and help businesses open. We've had problems with getting those 2 units open. I hope the people from Candy Apple can really get done on that. And I'm hoping, and I'm really happy to see that there's people who came in here and asked for a new ordinance or an amendment to the ordinance for microbreweries. I'm really happy that that's happening. And I just want to thank the council for doing all those things. And I'm hoping that, we can move forward on phase 2 and get parking done and help out these small businesses. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the consent agenda. So we need a motion there.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And we go to the voting section. First is the ordinance 714. Somebody want to make that motion?
Got to read it.
Ordinance 714 is an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the city of Flowery Branch, Georgia, to correct typographical errors, providing for severability, repealing conflicting ordinances, providing for an effective date, and for all other lawful purposes.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance 714, amending the zoning ordinance to correct typographical errors in Article 9, Section 9.3.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any questions about it? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next is the second reading of ordinance 715.
Ordinance 715 is an ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of Flowery Branch, Georgia by rezoning one parcel of real property of land totaling 9.393 plus or minus acres of land owned by Edge City Lights Ferry LLC, identified as 008 Gainesville Street, to be rezoned from planning unit development district PUD to residential detached single family R2, providing for severability, repealing conflicting ordinances, providing for an effective date, and for all other lawful purposes.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance 715.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, passed. Next is ordinance 716.
Ordinance 716 is an ordinance to fix the ad valorem tax rate for the city of Flowery Branch, Georgia for the tax year 2024 and for the fiscal year of 2025 to levy said tax upon all properties subject to taxation by the city of Flowery Branch, Georgia, to provide for the time of payment of said taxes, to provide for interest and penalties for the failure to pay taxes, to provide for an administrative procedure for the collection of delinquent ad valorem taxes, to provide an administrative procedure for the collection of delinquent ad valorem taxes for years prior to 2024, to repeal conflicting ordinances to the extent of any conflict, for severability, and for all other lawful purposes.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance 716 to establish the millage rate for tax year 2024, fiscal year 2025 at 3.264.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion there? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Under new business now, first is to authorize the mayor to consider the special transportation local option sales tax intergovernmental agreement.
Make a motion to authorize the mayor to execute the transportation special purpose local option sales tax, intergovernment agreement.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion here? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, we consider a real estate agreement with Blessing Trailers for the purchase of real property at the roundabout for Gaines Ferry and McEver Road.
I make a motion to authorize the agreement with Blessing Traders, Inc. and the purchase for the purpose of purchasing real property for $74,490.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We now own two corners over there. So next is we consider the resolution 24-003.
You got to read anything on that?
Yeah, I want to know.
Make a motion to consider, resolution 24-003.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And next is consider the adoption of resolution 24-004, and that's issuing the revenue bonds for our sewer plant.
Nothing to read there either?
Yes, sir.
No. Make a motion to approve resolution 24-004.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next is consider amendment number 1 to the lease agreement with Baby Bell Candy Apples to extend the lease for 6 months. And I think we said that they're going to start paying rent August 1st. So,
Make a motion to amend number 1 to the lease agreement with Baby Bell Candy Apple.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And next we consider the termination of Flowery Branch Main Street, a shopping center lease with Gustino's Deli at 5509 Main Street.
Make a motion to terminate the contract with Stino's Deli at 5509 Main Street. Second.
Okay. Now we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And next is we consider the first reading of ordinance 717, conditionally allowing microbreweries and micro distilleries in the CBD.
Ordinance 717 is an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the city of Flowery Branch, Georgia to allow microbreweries and microdistilleries to be located in the CBD zoning district by virtue of the granting of a conditional use permit by city council to provide for definitions to clarify the locations where package stores and growlers may be located by right, providing for severability, repealing conflicting ordinances, providing for an effective date, and for all other lawful purposes.
I make a motion to approve the first read of ordinance 717, adopting a new alcoholic beverages chapter for the city code of the city of Flowery Branch to allow for the licensing of microbreweries and microdistilleries.
Second. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That young man should be happy. We consider the first reading of ordinance 718.
Ordinance 718 is an ordinance by the mayor and city council for the city of Flowery Branch, Georgia, for the purpose of amending Chapter 8 of the Flowery Branch City Code relating to alcoholic beverages to update, replace, and readopt said chapter to provide for the licensings of microbreweries and microdistilleries, to provide for severability, to provide for an effective date, and for all other lawful purposes.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 718.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We do have an executive session.
Yes, sir. For pending litigation, property, and personnel.
And it is fair to say that we may vote on that when we come back, and we're going to discuss something that we may have a vote when we come back on. So, but thank all of you for being here.
Make a motion to move into executive session for potential litigation, property, and personnel.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
motion first?
Yes. Make a motion to exit executive session.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. I didn't count, Jeff. Sorry.
We're going to get there, though, Jeff. We're going to get there.
All right, now we have another motion. Before we leave, we have a motion.
Make a motion to approve the agreement between Brian Puckett and the City of Flowery Branch to settle the motion for temporary injunction related to East Chestnut Street.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passed. Now we need one more motion. I think
Motion to
we're done.
adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay.